What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today, we're continuing our little rundown of a lot of the playoff teams in the NBA, and today we have the New York Knicks, who have sort of been the talk of the league over the past, 3-4 weeks at this point, because they're on a big winning streak. I believe it's now like 12 out of their last 13, something like that. They've only lost one game to the Phoenix Suns since April 7th was their last loss before that. So it's been like a month now where the Knicks have just been scorching hot and just winning almost every single night, which is crazy because the Knicks, obviously, as we know, have not been good in a very long time. Nobody expected them to be this good this season. They have taken advantage of, kind of similar to what I said about the Hawks yesterday, have sort of taken advantage of some of the other teams in the Eastern Conference not being as good as we thought they were going to be. So the Knicks now find themselves in the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, and their schedule gets pretty tough here coming up. So I kind of wanted to talk about them for the rest of the year, their last couple of games or so, and where they might finish the season. So here's the standings for them right now. They're currently in that 4th spot, like I said, a game and a half up on the Atlanta Hawks. Not much has changed since yesterday when we looked at these. The Heat played and they lost. The Hornets played and they won. So a couple of movements down there, a little further down. But for the Knicks, nothing has changed. Them and the Hawks were both off tonight. So they are, like I said, a game and a half up. And that's 2 games ahead in the loss column, which is nice. They have only a couple of games left to play here and just 2 games up on the Hawks in the loss column. Now, like I kind of talked about yesterday, the Hawks only have 6 games left on their season, and those are a little bit easier. They have a pretty soft schedule on the stretch, and the Knicks' schedule starts to look pretty tough. So that 2-game lead in the loss column there does start to look a little bit precarious, but if they continue to play as well as they have over the past month, they'll be okay. They just need to win, at least not lose out for the rest of the season and split a couple of these games. We'll get into the schedule in a second. So they're doing fine. They're in that 4th spot. That's going to be the highest they can go. They're not going to catch Milwaukee at 3 at this point. So for their sake, they're going to want to hang on to 4. Even if you slip down to 5, it's okay because, you're still in that 4-5 series and you don't have to face one of the 3 best teams in the conference in the second round. So for their sake, they're hoping to stay in that 4-5 matchup and try to get out of the first round. So here's the remaining schedule for the Knicks, and as you can see, it gets pretty tough here coming up. They're in the middle of a road trip right now. They just had 2 games on the road against the Rockets and the Grizzlies and won both of those games. Those are 2 easier teams relative to what they're about to have to face. They have a game tomorrow night in Denver, I guess tonight as you're watching this, but as I'm recording this, it's tomorrow night, in Denver against the Nuggets, who have also been super hot over their last 10 or 11 games or so. They've been on fire without even, since Jamal Murray went down. Michael Porter Jr. is playing some great basketball, and Nikola Jokic is probably the MVP. So the Nuggets are definitely a tough out. Phoenix Suns are the team that kind of just ended their winning streak about a week ago and have the potential to play spoiler again. The Suns have been super consistent all year long. They're still playing for the 1 seed in the Western Conference. Them and the Jazz are going back and forth. So the Suns are going to have something to play for on Friday. So that's going to be another big game. Hopefully the Knicks, for their sake, are able to pull that one off. Then they go to LA for games against the Lakers and the Clippers, and those are also obviously very tough. Both of those teams are playing for something. The Clippers are kind of going back and forth with the Nuggets for that 3 seed. The Lakers are trying to avoid the play-in tournament. So that's a super brutal 4-game road trip. Now, the good news for the Knicks here is that none of those games are back-to-backs. A lot of teams down the stretch of the season have to play 3 or 4 back-to-backs to close out the year. At least in that stretch, none of those games are back-to-backs. Their final 2 is a back-to-back. But they get all these contenders here. I mean, those are, the 4 of the top teams in the Western Conference. I know the Lakers aren't record-wise, but we know what they're capable of when they're fully healthy and playing well. So those are all super tough games upcoming here, and they're probably going to have to win, at least one of those, and then the remaining 3 on their schedule if they want to keep that 4 seed. You're going to try to get at least 2 out of the next 4 would be ideal, and if they do that, then they're looking pretty good for that 4 spot. But you're just going to have to go out and get it. And then their last 3 is against the Spurs, who are still in the playoff mix, and they might be playing for something at that point. There is actually a chance that they might be locked into the 10 seed at that part of the season, just because their schedule's kind of tough down the stretch, and if the Pelicans kind of drop off and maybe the Warriors and the Grizzlies continue to win games, there's a chance that San Antonio could find themselves just booked into that 10th spot, no potential to go up or down, so they might be resting players at that point. We'll have to see. Charlotte and Boston are both right there in the thick of the playoff race in the middle of the Eastern Conference, so it's a good chance that both of those teams will also be playing for something as well, and that is a back-to-back against the Celtics. Now, the good news is also they have 3, those final 3 are all at home, So you have a good chance to build up some momentum there going into the playoffs, and I'm sure the fans are going to be loud and cheering and going crazy, because this is the Knicks and they haven't been good in so long. So getting that home court energy is going to be super, super nice for them. And you have a chance to build up some momentum there. So Spurs, Hornets, and Celtics, not super, super tough opponents, but specifically those last two with Charlotte and Boston, there's a good chance that they're all going to be playing for playoff positioning, so you're going to get their best shot, and it's going to be exciting. So the goal for the Knicks for the rest of the season should be maintaining their position as the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Getting that home court advantage in the first round is going to be huge, especially for a team that plays in Madison Square Garden. It has been so long since the Knicks have been relevant and been in the playoffs in general and just played meaningful basketball. And the fans are so fired up right now, especially with how hot this team has been over the last month. And if they can keep that up through the rest of the year and going into that first round playoff series, having home court advantage is going to be absolutely huge for them. Now, it is not the end of the world if they slip down to 5, because, like I said, that still allows them to avoid the 3 best teams in the conference in Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee in the first round. You'd rather not play one of those 3. You'd rather get a team like Atlanta or Miami or Boston or Charlotte or whoever it is that ends up in that 4-5 matchup. That's who you'd rather play. So even if you fall down to the 5, you lose home court advantage in the series, but it's okay. You still get to play against a much easier opponent. But the goal should be to stay at 4. And like I said, in this next 4-game stretch, it is going to be tough for them. But if they can stay hot and win at least 2 out of the next 4, and then win their final 3, which is not a given, just because there's a lot of, there's some really good teams coming up on their schedule, and the Hawks are 2 games back in the loss column. So if they lose 3 games and the Hawks win out, then the Knicks will get that spot. But they, assuming that the Hawks drop maybe 1 or 2 games down the stretch, that gives New York a little bit of a buffer room. So those 2 teams, I assume, are going to be going back and forth. This next week or so for the Knicks with their next 4 games is going to be huge. It's going to go a long way towards determining where they are eventually going to end up to end the year. I should also mention that they do have the tiebreaker over Atlanta in case that comes into play. So if they finish with the same record, then the Knicks will get the advantage over the Hawks for home court advantage if that is indeed the 4-5 matchup. And also, just to look at some of the other tiebreakers, I know they have a little bit more of buffer room against Miami and Boston. It's currently 2.5 games up on Miami and 3 games up on Boston, but they don't have the tiebreaker against the Heat. So if they finish with the same record as Miami, say that they struggle really in their next 4-game stretch and the Heat run the table to finish out their year, then there's a chance that the Heat could potentially jump up, and then the Knicks are looking at the 6th seed, which, like I said, they definitely want to avoid that. So they don't have the tiebreaker with the Heat, and they also currently the season series with the Celtics and with the Hornets are probably not going to be able to pass them. It's 5 games back, so unless the Knicks really struggle down the stretch, you're probably okay against Charlotte. But they have 1 game. Those last 2 games of their season are against the Celtics and the Hornets, and both of those season series are tied 1-1. So those last 2 will determine the tiebreaker in each of those matchups. That may become relevant with the Celtics, assuming that the Celtics can potentially get something going down the stretch. And like I said, if the Knicks struggle in their next 4 games. So that's something to look out for in the final couple of games of the year. Don't have the tiebreaker against Miami. Still up for grabs against Boston and Charlotte, and they do have the tiebreaker against Atlanta. But honestly, it's just so good to see the Knicks back and relevant again, because it's been so long since they've been in the playoffs, playing for something, been relevant at all, been watchable. It's just it's crazy, and nobody saw this coming either. Nobody saw this happening this year. I know I didn't. I had them in the bottom 3 or 4 of the Eastern Conference. Most people did, because there was just really no reason to think that this team would make the leap that it has this year. Now, I know that they changed coaches and they've had some high draft picks and made some moves in free agency over the offseason, but it's really, really remarkable just the leap that these guys have taken, specifically Julius Randle, who has really not only become an all-star this year, but he is worthy of All-NBA. I think he will make either All-NBA, maybe 2nd or 3rd team. He's been that good this year. His leap as a playmaker has been incredibly remarkable, seeing him, going up to 7 or 8 assists per game, when for his career he's averaging 3. It's just almost inexplicable seeing him make that jump. As well as in terms of efficiency, he's been so much better. And in terms of leadership, he has this team, playing well and playing together. RJ Barrett, who's in my background here, he is another guy who has made a huge leap in his second season, has really shown why he was worthy of that 3rd overall pick, and just taken the leap that a lot of people had expected him to be coming out of the gates after kind of a rough rookie season. He's really looking like a very solid NBA player now. You have role players who know exactly what they need to do, exactly where they need to be. Guys like Reggie Bullock and Nerlens Noel. The trade for Derrick Rose was a home run. He's come in and played really well. So they just have everybody clicking together. Tom Thibodeau has this team running at maximum capacity. And it's just been insane watching this run. It energizes the fans. It energizes the whole league in general, just because the Knicks have been so bad for forever, and the NBA is just more fun when they're good. So good on them for having a good year. Good on them for clinching a winning season. Good on them for making the playoffs. I know it's not mathematically official yet, but they're going to be in there. This is a great story, and I'm happy to see them playing good basketball again. But yeah, I think that's about all I have on the New York Knicks. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to. Leave a comment letting me know what you think about the Knicks and how good they've been this season. Would love to hear your thoughts down below. But with all that said, I will see you guys in the next one.